the 2025 Peace Talks Guide to Who to Watch at World. I'm your host, Rob Shields, and back with me for a second year in a row, she makes connections with pieces and people, E.B. Caron. Welcome back, E.B.
Thank you. It's so fun to talk about all these puzzlers with you, Rob.
I'm thrilled to have you back, and it's always fun to chat with you. Year 2. This is now the second year we have done this.
It is.
I'm glad that you have joined me through this and the Nationals, the pre and post things. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
This is the 5th year of Worlds. As usual, it is in the Millennium Dome in Valladolid, Spain, for those folks who have never been or never watched it. It's September 16th through the 21st, so 6 days of puzzling. And across those 6 days, 22 puzzling events. So if you are starved for jigsaw puzzling content, we've got some here for you. What we'll be talking about is a lot of information as we have it at the moment. We're recording this on September 1st, 2025. Lots of things are in flux. I know that some people are getting moved around, I think perhaps at their request, but as usually happens in these kinds of things in terms of which heats people are in, who's actually participating. So if you want to keep up with the latest in terms of who's in each heat, go to worldjigsawpuzzle.org. Let's talk a little bit about numbers. I took a look at how many people are going to be there this year. And I guess I should start by saying last year there were 75 different countries. This year there looks like there's only 67. It's sort of a running theme here. Last year there were 1,200 individuals, total different individuals participating. This year is 1,148.
Oh, wow.
I've got that broken down a little bit by country. We see Germany went from 166 participants last year to 135 this year. US is going from 116 to 110. Spain, interestingly, from 132 last year to 107 this year. France is down a few. UK is down, or UK is actually up from 42 to 49. Canada has got 52 people this year, which I don't have stats on for last year, but I'm pretty sure that's an improvement for them. And then 41 Australians. So we've got a number of things declining. Any thoughts on what's going on there?
Well, I think being a big Peace Talks fan and listening to every episode, I've heard a couple of your recent guests talking about this, and I think it does echo what I've heard among the American speed puzzlers, which is that a lot of people want to go to Worlds once, but going, especially every year, is just too much. It's too much time off from work, too much expense. I mean, that's true for me too. I went in 2023 and have not been back yet.
The other thing, part of that I keep hearing is that folks would like to see it going somewhere else because a lot of people don't have a lot of time off. So they're spending this time off going to the same small town in Spain, which can be great. But I think especially if you've gone twice, probably most people would be interested in going somewhere else with their limited time off.
Yeah, and actually we even saw that they had more preliminary heats and ended up cutting some of those preliminary heats and streamlining the schedule because they just weren't needed.
Yeah, I heard that. And I just wasn't paying enough attention to the schedule beforehand to notice the difference. I know that we've got 6 individual rounds this currently, A through F, I think. And I feel like I saw 1 or 2 more, but do you remember what the differences were?
I don't remember the exact differences, no.
And looking at the schedule as it currently stands, it's still fairly jam-packed with puzzling. I was kind of curious to see where would those other events have been. Maybe they would have been, looks like the first day of puzzling gets started fairly late, so maybe they would have been in advance of that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure whether it was originally 2 individual semifinals and they expanded to 3, but that's also a change this year. So gives more people a chance to qualify into a semifinal, which I know was something that disappointed a lot of people last year when they were like right on the cusp of qualifying into that next round.
Do you think that from your own perspective, having more semifinals is better?
I mean, it's hard to say. I think it'll make those semifinal heats more stressful because the cutoff will be higher in terms of who makes it into the final.
So speaking of people not coming, I thought it might be interesting to just walk through some of the folks that are notable for not attending this year. Anybody on your list?
Well, of course, I think on everyone's list is Kristen Tuve, the reigning solo world champion, who shared in her Instagram stories over the summer that she is not planning on attending Worlds. She said it was for both mental health and physical health reasons. And you might remember from the podcast with her, Rob, that she's gotten COVID after every single World. So she told me that she has a much busier schedule right now and just like can't risk getting COVID for the fourth time
Sure.
and just kind of being so exhausted after Worlds and after COVID with everything she's got going on in her life right now.
It's true. I know that she took a very long break after this year's Worlds for a lot of different reasons. And I can imagine, well, actually talking to a lot of other elite level puzzlers, like that is built into their schedule for this year is taking a break,
Mm.
and just speaks to how exhausting it can be to do the preparation, both just mental and physical preparation. I mean, you know better than I do to get into that space. So I definitely can understand somebody wanting to take some time and not necessarily having, like, when we've talked to Michaela, for example, Michaela Keener, like she had a very similar story, which is to say that it didn't always fit into her life the level of pressure required, right? Life is going on a bunch of different fronts all the time. Puzzling is one of those things that sometimes has to make way for other things that are going on. And especially if you're traveling very far to Spain for a long period of time, like that's a real commitment.
And Kristen did say that she hopes to be back in 2026.
Well, we all hope that she will be back in 2026. Also on my list, notably Mercedes
Hmm.
Artefer.
Yeah, we saw her at the European Jigsaw Puzzle Championship. I think she placed fourth in the finals. And of course, that was in her home country, Hungary. So much easier time getting there.
There are other Hungarians not going as well. Von der
Mm,
Varga, both the Brigitas,
mhm,
Pozna and Winkler are not going.
mhm.
So a substantial slice out of the Hungarian side of things.
And from the US, our national champion, Kelly Walter, will not be going. She told me that she will be starting her surgery rotation in med school that week. But beyond that, she's just so busy with school right now that she didn't feel like it was worth it to go to Worlds, given that she won't really have enough practice time to
Mm.
be at her best.
Yeah, and last year's champ Alice Rowe also not going
Right.
for I'm kind of broadly similar reasons. I'm imagining
Mhm.
she's starting school again. Sort of life intervenes. The list of people that I have that aren't going from the U.S. is probably like 20 people long. You know, we're missing folks from like half the Wicked Quick team, Emily Chandran and Emma Pan. I think also for school related reasons. But you got Andrea Ping, Kathy and Jean Reuter, Kat Dilks, Lauren Cutts, like it goes on and on. And Sarah Schuler, it just
Yeah.
goes on and on and on.
The last year's world champion team, the Busy
Yeah,
Birdies, all four Busy Birdies, not going to be
that's right.
there.
Becca Taylor's not going. You know, in a weird sort of way, it's sort of a changing of the guard.
Hmm.
Like a lot of the folks who've been iconic in the last couple of years is sort of like taking a break. And it seems like there are opportunities for folks to step into that a little bit. I think the vacuum that's being left is pretty big, especially on the US side. But, you know, we've got folks like Hannah Doyle coming in to fill that gap. And so it will be interesting to see what happens on the US front this year.
Lots of newcomers from other countries too, like for example, Canada.
Canada's bringing a bunch of new folks. Like I said, Australia seems to be bringing a bunch more folks. So I'm excited to see as countries who have been historically less well represented gain momentum in their own countries. Like Australia's got a good history of competitive jigsaw puzzling. I feel like Canada is really starting to build that. We learned that with talking to Devin Donaldson. They're actively trying to make a more trans Canadian concept of jigsaw puzzling, and it seems like that's paying off in terms of attendance at Worlds. And so there's I think, two other interesting notable things people missing. The international puzzlers are not here this year.
Mm,
So they were, I think, the Siberian team.
right.
I don't know what to make of that. Probably they, decided. similarly to everybody else, that maybe that wasn't a thing that they wanted to commit to again this year. And then the other person of note I thought was S.J. Bodell from UK, also not going to be there.
Well, I know SJ was actually very outspoken about why she wasn't going to Worlds on her Instagram story. A few others who were on my list of not going, I kind of focused on national champions who wouldn't
Oh
be
yeah,
there. Rena, the Finnish national champion, Daniela, the Brazilian national champion, Haruka, the Japanese national champion, Natalia, the Colombian national champion, and Ole, the Norwegian national champion, who we all know is the national champion because Kristen was sick that weekend. But he's a pretty good speed puzzler in his own
I
right.
was gonna
Like
say
he was
I
in the top
remember Ole
20
being
last
pretty
year.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of those folks seem like they're like South America. That's quite the
Yeah.
trek.
Yeah.
So I imagine that similar sorts of things are in play when it comes to having to make a trip from Brazil, for example.
Right. And I know it was also discussed last year that for countries where getting visas isn't an issue, we don't really think about it as being a barrier. But for other countries, it's much harder to get a visa and plan a trip to Spain.
That's a great point. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, but that's a really great point. I have a couple of rules of note, and I'm going to talk through them, and we'll see if they're actually interesting enough to keep in here.
Well, people are really interested in rule changes, Rob. I mean, I might know a person or two who check the rules of the WJPC every few days just to make sure that they're not changing the rules because it happens.
What on earth would they be looking so often for? Just because they change from time to time?
That and the communication isn't great.
Mm,
So that when there's a rule change, there's no clear communication like a blog, like, oh, see this recent change in our rules. You only find it by combing through the rules.
yeah, and there's some pretty non-trivial rule changes that I was going to get to a little bit later as we get into the individual sections, which I only know because I know nerds who read rules, and I am a nerd who reads rules. And so you're right. I am not aware of an outlet where one could go and find out. I don't recall them particularly being spelled out in any official communication via email, for example, either.
No, I think you have to go to the website to read them. The big rule change is that in addition to giving the teams prelim rounds 4 puzzles and having them choose 2 to do, this year, the choice twist has been extended to also the individual preliminary rounds and the pairs preliminary rounds. So in all preliminary rounds, well, in the individuals and pairs in which those guys do only 1 puzzle, they'll be given 2 and get to choose 1 to do.
Yeah, I've talked to a few people who are not familiar with having to do that. I mean, I'm not aware of anybody who does that as a individual competition level. The collect a few and choose a few is fairly unique to some specific competitions like Worlds, but putting it down into an individual's heat is a little surprising, I have to say. And that's the one thing that I feel like really ought to have been well communicated, and maybe again it wasn't. I just didn't see it. But that's an extra skill that a lot of people don't have because they haven't had to develop it. So if you're not aware that that's coming, I can imagine that could be a little panic inducing when you sit down and find that there are 2 puzzles and now you've got to choose one.
Yeah. As a viewer, I actually do think make it more fun to watch, right? Because instead of just predicting like how fast one puzzle is going to be, we'll get to predict which puzzle will be faster and what the fastest finish time on each will be. I think it will add to the conversation happening in the live stream, and I think that's why the change was made. I've heard from Val that like
That right?
Alfonso really enjoys that part of the teams competition, the teams prelim competition, and like as a commentator that she really enjoyed that part of it too. So I think that's the reason why it was changed. Although, again, I think it could have been communicated better. Like people could get behind it more if someone was explaining why they wanted to make this change and what it would add.
It is fascinating that it means that you have to source a whole bunch more puzzles. Alfonso, who is in charge of the World Jigsaw Puzzle Association, that's a burden that he's put on himself. So I imagine he's fine with the trade off. It is also interesting, in my opinion, that if you are a person who has been putting in a lot of practice going into this competition, that it increases the odds you're going to find a puzzle that you've already done and can be really fast at. So if you are an elite or just a heavy practice puzzler, this can give you a leg up because probably you've done these puzzles before. And now instead of, we saw last year that some pretty amazing times were set by people who had previously done the puzzle, because the puzzles in the preliminary rounds are previously published ones. And they were able to sort of jet through it. And now this just increases the possibility that somebody's going to find a puzzle that they've already done. I'm sort of split
Yeah.
by that. I love to see high performance puzzling. Also, it's probably, I actually have no idea if it's going to have an effect on the margins where people are actually on the cusp of going forward or not. To me, it feels like it could tip the scales to having people who are not as hardcore practicers. It was more likely to pick against them, but theoretically, it gives everybody a chance to pick the puzzle that they're going to be fastest with.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what people's experience of it will be after the fact. Like, did it reduce their stress to know that they wouldn't be stuck with like dark boats and that they could choose a, slightly less bad option? Or is it adding to the stress because on top of trying to puzzle fast enough to qualify into a semifinal, they're also stressed about making the right choice between these two puzzles?
Yeah, I've spoken to a few people who haven't been to Worlds before and had to make that decision even at the teams level, and I'm getting the sense that it is adding stress more than it is relieving it. Just because like I said earlier, it's another skill that you have to have, and there's always the chance of, like, we all know that it is hard to choose a puzzle for a competition because you can make your best guess as to what you think will be difficult for players, but often it's not until they've actually started doing it that everybody understands where the complexity is. And that's the same when you're picking the puzzle for yourself. Is like, not everybody is great at going, okay, well, this obviously is going to be easier than this other thing, especially if they don't obviously just lean into your skills. If you've got like a gradient versus like color blocking, obviously which one of those things work well for you. But if you've got like a landscape of one sort and a landscape of a different sort, maybe that decision is a lot harder.
Yeah. And then the other thing is that in the teams round, they've historically allowed the teams, 5 or so minutes, I'd say at least 5 minutes before the round to make their choices. But based on the rules as they're written currently in the pairs, it sounds like both puzzles will be hidden and they have to choose immediately, which I think is a lot harder than making an individual decision because I mean, I've been on a team where we like went back and forth about it. And so I feel like it introduces the possibility of drama with your pair if you don't make the right decision.
Well, again, great for TV, less great for if you're the actual people making the decisions. So with individuals, obviously we've got that particular rule. You have to be 14 years or older. There's going to be 6 preliminary rounds of about 170 people each. As we talked about, you get 2 puzzles and must choose one. You have 90 minutes for the individual first rounds, and 85 of the 170 people move on to the next round. There's a country playoff rule, which I'm still a little head scratching on trying to figure out what exactly it means. But what it seems to suggest is that if there are countries who don't qualify individuals into any of the rounds, that they will take the person who is most likely to, who is, I guess, highest qualified of all the rounds for that country and move them into the semifinals in addition to the people who already qualified, as opposed to last year's rule where if nobody from the country made it in an individual heat, then that would bump some people out who had qualified from a country who did make it in.
Yeah, so there were a lot of expressed concerns about how the country rule played out last year, and I think there has been some response to try to change the country rule in order to maximize the number of countries represented in the final without, I guess, penalizing people in every single preliminary heat. I don't know if I should say penalizing because
Well, previously it was penalizing, right? Because previously, if you were in a heat and a person from a country who didn't qualify, like that country had no qualifiers, then if you were on the cusp, you could get bumped out, right? Because that's
right.
the way that works. My reading of the rules currently, and I know a bunch of people are writing content about this interpretation of this rule specifically, so sort of bow towards them whenever that information comes out. But my interpretation of this rule is that any country who qualified in based on this kind of playoff rule, as they're calling it, is in addition to everybody else. And if that's the case, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because that gives everybody an opportunity to move forward without kicking anybody who's qualified out. It seems like it might make things a little easier to deal with in terms of the event planning as well.
Yeah. The other perspective, I guess, would be that like I think like the previous versions of the role only like guaranteed spots to the top 30 and then everyone else was like a bonus, I guess, but that wasn't I think based on how limited the impact of the country rule had been in 2023, people were expecting it to have the same extent of limited impact in 2024, and it was more impactful and changed the official versus actual cutoff, I guess.
I think if there can be surety at the time of the end of the round about whether you move forward or not, then we've improved the overall situation. And if that is done by saying there are X number of slots, those get filled. And if we need to, we have some extra slots that we will also add people into to get countries qualified in. That feels like a good move, right? It feels like we're saying, okay, everybody knows that they're getting in. And if we need extra spots to get in, great, we've got extra spots for them to get in.
And hopefully, some of those additional entry fees are going to a higher bandwidth for the website so it can actually update and let people know if they get into the next round.
Yeah, that's a really great point. That is a hilarious and great point because when there's less surety, access to information is key, right? And the
Yeah,
fact that the website was not available at important times last year,
it contributed to the stress.
it did. It did. There's a lot more advertising on the site now. I feel like so maybe that's going to pay for extra bandwidth.
There's so much advertising. uh, and the word for close changes depending on which national
It does,
championship you're
right?
looking at. So I'm like, I think this is the close option, but I don't know this word.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, what this means is they're going to get a whole lot more revenue when the people when Worlds is actually going on, and that means that the site will be more available.
Fingers crossed.
I will trade availability for ads in these critical moments if that's what we need to do. Real quick on the semis and the finals for individuals, there are 3 semi rounds this year, up from 2, right? 2 from last year.
Yeah.
Why would they be adding extra rounds?
I'm actually not sure because I hadn't followed the schedule too closely.
Well, maybe they're trying to allow more people to get to semis
Yeah. I'm
and
not
that way they can have that experience. I know I've heard a number of people say, your odds of moving forward are better now. It wasn't clear to me whether that was because of just a change due to attendance levels or if it was due to like them adding these semi rounds.
definitely odds for moving forward to semifinals higher, and then odds for moving on to finals from semifinals lower because you have to be like the top 33% as opposed to the top 50%.
So the semifinals, you will have one unpublished puzzle from the Ravensburger 2026 catalog. So no decision making needed there. You get 75 minutes as opposed to 90 minutes. Top 60 move on to the finals in each round, each of the 3 rounds. And then the finals have 180 participants, an unpublished puzzle, 75 minutes. Now we're getting into the actual fun stuff. Well, let me say
Yay.
that different. We're getting into different fun stuff. We're getting into fun stuff that involves stats and also people. So I did a quick breakdown of using the Peace Talks rating that I've developed, which it's worth saying is primarily a sort of attempt to understand how people are doing so far. So it's not necessarily a prediction of how people are going to do, but it's just a statistical understanding of how people have been doing over basically the last year. So I took everybody who has a Peace Talk rating. Everybody has a rating if they have participated in any competition that I have been able to get the results for. So currently, I think that we have 350 or more competitions in the database. So a lot of people have them. More than half of the people have a rating. So I just took the average ratings for each of the heats in the individuals for all the individuals in them to come up with what are the hardest and the easiest heats in terms of your
Hmm.
competition to be in.
Nice.
And so in this case, I don't know if we'll dig in enough for this to make sense unless you want to go look at it. But Heat C is the easiest, and it's easiest by a little ways. But then Heat B in individuals is the hardest in terms of other competition that you'll be facing, and it's the hardest by a ways. Heat A also is challenging relative to the other heats, but Heat B is by far the hardest one according to that measure.
Interesting.
If you're in Heat B, you got a lot of competition. So, with that in mind, let's talk about people. So, what we're going to do with individuals is we're going to start with I took the top 20 ish people as per this rating, which is, like I said, just an indication of how people have done up to this point, given a certain perspective. It's not predictive, but we thought that would be a good way of taking a look at who might be interesting to watch in the individuals. So, just to make things a little more interesting, we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up to the top so that you can all hold your suspense and be surprised once we get to the very top and find out who's on that list. So, the first person we're going to talk about is
Marcia van der Meer from the Netherlands. I'll share some fun facts about Marcia first. You'll notice that she puzzles left-handed because she is left-handed. That was something that jumped out to me watching her on the Euro Jigsaw Jam. She learned about the World Jigsaw Puzzle Championship through Caron Puzzles videos in 2023 and bought 2 of the puzzles from the 2023 championship to compare her times. Saw some good numbers, and then started speed puzzling in 2024. Her first Euro Jigsaw Jam competition was in October 2024, and she may have won it or been in like second place. She was definitely like near the top. Like many Dutch puzzlers, she's better at busy puzzles and cartoony or illustration style puzzles.
you want to talk just briefly about why that is?
Sure. Well, it's because, like, from my understanding, like 95% of the puzzles that exist in the Netherlands are by one artist or in the style of one artist, Jan van Hasteren, whose art is busy cartoons.
They look like they would be fun to put together. They would look like they would be terrible to speed puzzle.
But the Dutch are really good at them. It's
They
like,
are. No, they are.
wow. One more fun fact about Marcia is that she helps build pop-up escape rooms,
Oh, neat.
coming up with both the puzzles for the escape room and the storylines, and then actually building the room too.
Super cool. A non-trivial crossover in terms of people who like escape rooms and people who like jigsaw puzzling.
Yeah, I've noticed that too.
Just to add on to that, I have that she was in 12 Euro Jigsaw Jam events and only wasn't in the top 10 once. So obviously she's competitive on that front and was third in the Dutch Nationals. Moving on to the next person on my list, the first person who has actually been on a Peace Talks episode, Hannah Farthing from Australia.
Oh, Hannah.
Hannah is part of the Aussie All Stars, and you can check out an interview I did with them on episode 21. They are delightful. It is definitely worth a listen. Hannah herself was 29th last year in the individuals at Worlds. She was 8th in the Australian Nationals. Only has a couple of other competitions since Worlds beyond that, or at least competitions that I could see.
I really enjoyed that episode.
Yeah, they made that episode a lot of fun. Coming in next on our list as we work our way towards the top, Inga Sino.
Inga was ninth at last year's World Jigsaw Puzzle Championship. One thing I learned about Inga this year is that she likes indoor rock climbing and bouldering, and she
Mm.
says she likes it because she likes the sport because it's a puzzle too. But according to her sister Ellen, Inga is much better at doing jigsaw puzzles and bouldering, and the like general puzzle skill is not transferable.
With that, I guess that makes sense. There's not a well, I don't know. There's not a lot of grip strength required in jigsaw puzzling, but other things I have about her is that she was first in the Belgian championship and 12th in the European championship that was held earlier this year. Lots of involvement in the Euro Jigsaw Jam, which is, I should say, a virtual competition put on in Europe by another person we'll end up talking about at some point. And she's consistently in the top 10. This is a good time for me to mention that my pronunciation of things is terrible. And so this is my semi-annual opportunity to butcher a bunch of people's names. I apologize to everybody in advance. This is part of the reason that EB is along. A very small part, but an important part is that she endeavors to go figure out how to pronounce everybody's name. And I know I've heard at least one person compliment her on how good a job she does at pronouncing people's names. So you may hear her just rattling off the person's name because she's the one who's most likely to get it right. But coming up next is Hannah Leikoinen. How close did I get?
Hannah is someone I haven't reached out to and asked for like the audio recording sent to me. I mean, I might say Hannah, but I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Well, I'll count that as a win. She started her career basically on Euro Jigsaw Jam. She was there from the very first and has done pretty much everyone since and has never not been in the top 8. She was 27th last year in the World Individuals, 6th in the Finland national competition, 4th in the Nordic regional competition, and 16th in the Euro Jigsaw Championship.
Just a few backgrounds on Hannah. She prefers illustration puzzles, dislikes photographs, and has been doing Ravensburger puzzles since childhood. She calls Ravensburger her number one.
And I think I didn't mention this. So she is from Finland. And I think I actually didn't mention that Inga's from the Netherlands as well. On to the next person, Maya von Borstel.
Hmm. All I know about her is that she's German, right?
She is German. She was 50th last year, 8th in the German championship this year, and first in Austria. And she was also 20th in the Euro championship.
I'd like to dig up some more info on her.
Here's somebody I know you know, hailing from Italy, Chiara Dell'Antonio. She goes
Hmm.
all the way back to Worlds 2022, was 11th last year, 4th in the German championship, 9th in Finland, 1st in Italy, 14th in Euros. You can see she does a lot of competing. And if you want to know more about Chiara, we have a whole episode devoted to her, episode 13.
Last year was the first year that Kiara was outside the top 10 in the solo event at the World Jigsaw Puzzle Championship. So 2022 and 2023, she was in the top 10. And last year, she was just on the edge with number
Just,
11th, just missed the
yeah.
cube.
Our first person from Canada, Megan Sloka. My records for her are primarily just 2024 and 2025 Canadian Nationals, where she won both. She was mentioned on episode 18 of Peace Talks by Devin Donaldson, who said that she's kind of a mystery. She shows up, beats everybody, and then disappears until next year. Devin said on that episode that when Megan won this year's Canadian Nationals, she basically said something to the effect of, if anybody wants to pair or teams with me, let me know. Looked like she had her eyes on going to Worlds and was looking for other people to participate with.
Yeah, I learned that Megan got into speed puzzling because of her aunt, Chantel Lamontagne, a Canadian puzzler who's been speed puzzling for years. And I also talked to another Canadian puzzler who may be on your list, and it made me realize that actually Canada has kind of like a long history of speed puzzling, sort of at the local, more informal level, which is cool. But Megan's aunt, she said it took her aunt Chantel a while to convince Megan to start speed puzzling because Megan liked puzzling casually and thought that speed puzzling could take over her life if she wasn't careful.
Oh,
But she did say it has not taken over her life yet. Megan first competed on a team with her aunt in February 2024, and 2024 Canadian Nationals in April 2024 was the first time Megan had ever competed solo, and she won both her preliminary heat and the finals. Interestingly, after that, you said Devin said that she kind of disappeared. She was finishing her final year of her bachelor's degree. She said during that year, she refused to allow any puzzles into her living space because she knew that it would keep her from focusing on school. Maybe part of the reason why it hasn't taken over her life yet. And then 2025 Canadian Nationals was less than 2 weeks after she finished her final exam of
interesting.
college. And again, she won both her preliminary heat and the finals.
Yeah, well, I think that if she tiptoes out into the world stage, she may not be able to come back. So hopefully, she's gotten all of the education she needs because she's now going to go down the rabbit hole.
She might, yeah, might still take over her life. One other interesting thing, actually, two more interesting things she shared with me. She's really good at finding four-leaf clovers, which I mean, I see the connection to finding a certain puzzle piece. And she said that when she's casually puzzling, she doesn't puzzle straightforwardly and hasn't done that for years. She always gives herself strict rules, like she has to go from top down or
Oh, I
bottom
love
up.
this.
She
Yeah,
can't leave any holes or there are no floating islands around. And she says that when she's speed puzzling, she can let the rules go. And it kind of feels like she's been jogging with weights and now she's like taking off the weights for the race.
yeah, yeah. No, that's great. I love that. As a person who does that kind of like imposes extra things on other parts of my life, I'm not good enough at jigsaw puzzling to do that. I definitely recognize that the draw of doing that. So it's fun to hear somebody talk about that. But yeah, I can imagine once you're not imposing your own rules, off you go. You're like you said, your weighted vest is left in the gym or wherever. Our first person from the Czech Republic, Markéta Frieslerova. She was 21st last year in World's Individuals. She was third in the Czech Nationals and ninth in the European Championships. Those were her only recorded events since last year's Worlds. This is not uncommon, actually, where we find people who are sort of internationally capable on jigsaw puzzlers who come out. They do maybe two or three other events besides Worlds in the interim time. It's hard for me to tell if that just means that I don't have, for example, access to I haven't found the right Czech Republic competition sites, virtual competitions maybe, or actual competitions, or she just doesn't participate. So she's one of those ones who's just got a couple of events, and we don't see her again until Worlds.
Well, you might also remember that when I remind you that she and Teresa said that like they were actually a team of three last year because Marquita was pregnant.
Uh huh.
So, baby Isabella was born in February. So that's another recent development for Marquita that might be, leading to some choosing of high priority competitions to participate in.
You know, school, children, other life events—they're really getting in my way of enjoying a jigsaw puzzle competition. I need people to make better life choices for me. Up next, our one and only USA entrant on the list, Hannah Doyle.
Oh, wow.
Hannah emerged from seemingly nowhere this year to take second in the US Nationals behind Kelly Walter. She's new to Worlds, very strong since Nationals. She swept the Ohio State Championships and the Portland Jigsaw Masters. I'm really excited to see what she'll do.
Me too. Hannah's puzzling origin story is that she got back into puzzling as an adult when she was spending New Year's Eve alone. And less than a year and a half later, she was placing second in US Nationals.
It's the kind of origin story that a lot of the elite puzzlers have and that a lot of us non-elite puzzlers wish we had. It's like, oh yeah, it's nice to come out and, be a puzzler all your life and suddenly just realize that you have the skills to compete at the international level. Up next, our next Australian, Katrina Coleman. Katrina is the Aussie national champ and also got first in the New Zealand nationals, and she was seventh last year. If you want to check out more on her and the other Aussies, check out episode 21 of Peace Talks.
Right behind Katrina at the New Zealand Nationals, actually from Auckland, New Zealand. So the New Zealand national champion is Tyler Duberly, or Tyler Duberly, as you might say in America.
I appreciate you putting on the Kiwi accent.
Well, it sounds more like Tyla, the way she says it. New Zealand Nationals was in July of this year, and this was Tyla's first individual competition ever. And at this competition, she found out about the World Jigsaw Puzzle Championship and just got connected with a bunch of other puzzlers from New Zealand. She's doing fundraising to make the trip with the help of the New Zealand Puzzle Association. And she said she's also getting lots of 500-piece puzzles from them because she actually doesn't own any 500-piece puzzles herself.
Only higher puzzle count pieces, I imagine.
I guess so. I mean, she's just like brand new to the sport and just like jumped in. And I mean, kind of similar to Hannah Doyle, is now her national champion. One other fun fact about Tyla is that she says her true passion is not speed jigsaw puzzling, it's the sport squash. And that basically her whole life is focused on squash. She's also a mom, but she's played her entire life. She's done lots of squash coaching. She ran a squash club for a few years, and for the past almost 5 years, she's worked for Squash New Zealand, running all the national events.
I love how much information you just have on everybody.
Well, I wanted to throw that in because I know she won't be in your rankings, but she's a national champion, and I think it's so cool that she's a newcomer and just like jumping in and going to Worlds.
I also love the community support.
Yeah.
Coming up next on our list, the last person from the Czech Republic, Teresa Koptikova. She was 10th last year, first in the Czech Nationals, and 6th in the European Championship.
And are we like about like midway on your list, Rob? Like where would you say we are?
I would say we're about midway on our list, yeah.
I think Teresa has gotten a lot faster in the past year. I'm not making any predictions, but
So you feel like she may be undervalued given where she is?
I would be surprised if Teresa wasn't in the top 10. And I remember her saying last year, I think last year she turned 40 and she was starting to feel like, oh, these younger puzzlers are coming up and like I can't hold my own against them. And I think she really is holding her own, at least based on the EJJ results that I'm following.
It looks like she had a moment in June where she sort of had a performance improvement, like a step change performance improvement. So you might be right. Like she doesn't have the traditional, like often what we see in terms of improvement is sort of a linear decline in overall times or an increase in sort of rating scores. She has a sort of jumpy set of stats. It does drop down pretty substantially in June. It kicks back up, but not as far as it was before. So it's hard to say looking at some stats like that whether this is indicative of long-term performance or not because it doesn't follow a regular pattern. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason that she's on the list at all. Obviously, she was 10th last year. She's performed really well this year at a bunch of, or at least the couple of events that I've seen. A constant member of the top 10, 15 club at Worlds. It is worth saying, and I've said this on a couple of other podcasts, but we're talking about people sort of in increasing how they've done according to a certain metric of performance over this last year or so. But it really is a matter of a person having the right puzzle on the right day for them. once you get to a lot of these levels, the difference between somebody who is like where Teresa is on my list as opposed to people higher on the list is really just a matter of luck. Like for the performance at the end of the day, some people are really great, and some people are going to have luck fall their way more often. But it does not mean that somebody who is where Teresa is on the list compared to somebody who's higher up on the list is going to predict that. Like it's just that that is where their performance has taken them so far. So I really do believe that once you hit the really top tier echelons, it's anybody's game. It just needs to be the right circumstances for you to hit like what works for you.
Right. And I think like Alejandro is saying that same thing in the episode you did with him that, 2023 Worlds that he won, he really, attributes that to luck. And
Yeah.
he said with a different puzzle, it would have been Kristen.
Well, we talked about this same sort of concept with the Aussie All Stars a little bit about how once you're in an elite level, like very small changes can make several different places change hands. But also, when I was talking to Irina Shevchenko on the Portland Jigsaw Masters live stream, I think it was, or possibly it was just in person, she was we were talking about her speed run last year because she did such an amazing job. 17, I'm going to say 44, 17 minutes, 44 seconds on a 500 piece puzzle, having done it well over 100 times. But I asked her how much of that final time came down to luck. And she said it was definitely in play because her best time was not her last time. It really depended on how the pieces fell out of the box as to what her performance would be. So it's a good reminder that every little thing at the elite level can matter. Like if you're seeing a difference of 2 or 3 seconds, which is not atypical for elite level finishing, it could be that somebody just had a bad roll out of the box, like the pieces fell more down than up or something, and that makes all the difference. So luck plays a huge role in this as well as skill. So it's just important to keep in mind that a number of factors can play into who actually is going to come out on that particular day. But these are all people who've done amazing work over the course of the last year. Speaking of amazing work, moving on up to Kathi Reiner from Germany. She was fifth last year, first in the German championships, first in the Euro championships. She often performs better in person than she does on the virtual competitions. She participates in a lot of virtual competitions, which means that she's sort of down a little bit on my list because where she is finishing in virtual competitions is bringing her down a little bit. But when you put her in person, she performs amazingly well.
Yeah. And of course, we recorded our world's post recap with Kati last year. One of the things I love about Kati is how self-reflective she is about the the mental struggles of speed puzzling. I would totally recommend going to listen to that podcast ahead of
Episode 8.
Worlds if you have time in the next week.
If you're, say, traveling to Worlds,
Yeah. But what you said about luck is so funny because the most recent EJJ that I was watching that Kati participated in, she was doing the puzzle on like basically like a tray table on a train because the trains, like her initial train was canceled and she had the puzzle with her, but she was not where she planned to be when the EJJ was live, and she did it anyway and got like another passenger to hold her phone to keep her on camera. So
wow.
I'm not sure how many of her I I feel like some of her other EJJs had other kind of mishaps like that, but that was a recent dramatic one.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm developing what I'm calling the 6 C's of puzzle difficulty, like what it is that makes a your ability to complete a puzzle better or worse, and one of them is context. And so that's definitely in play there, right? Are you in a place where you're comfortable competing or comfortable assembling something? Is the lighting good? All that other stuff. So that context really really has a big impact. But I'd love to hear her puzzling on a train.
Alejandro is another one who's been taking his EJJ puzzles all over to different hotels and countries for work projects.
Moving up, our first entrant from Spain. Now, Spain is interesting in my data because Spain and a couple of other locations in the world, they have a lot of people who compete amongst themselves. They compete amongst themselves often, and there's not a lot of necessarily extra people. Spain has a long history of lots of competitions. So that if you go look at the Spanish website AEPUZ, their history of their count of total competitions that they've done is quite high, but the number of people who participate in is relatively low, and they're all in Spain, like from Spain, which means that it skews a little bit the numbers of Spanish competitors because they're mostly competing against themselves, so their numbers are sort of honed against a smaller group. So we have to make some corrections. But that all being said, the first Spaniard on my list is Gisela Arons Toro, who was 57th last year, fourth at the Spanish National Championships. Only has 3 competitions recorded since last Worlds, so another one who's not necessarily got a lot of data points along the way.
Yeah, and that 57th, I think, kind of underrepresents Hazela's, potential because I'm pretty sure in the prelim and semifinal, she did much better than that.
Next up on the list, our first Polish entry.
Mm.
And we have a whole episode around the Polish powerhouse, episode 22, if you want to know more about any of the Polish people that we'll be talking about. But coming up next on our list is Christian Niedziela. Christian, he's was third at last year's competition, third at the Polish competition, fifth at the Euro competition. He's been in a lot of EJJs, or a fair number of them, and he's first nearly every time. So he has sort of the opposite of Kati Reiner problem, where he's like really good in a virtual competition. If he can figure out how to bring that capability into a live competition, I think he really can compete. I think he can win. He thinks he can win, and I agree, but he still has some work to do, I think, or at least it seems like there's still some work to do on his part to be as comfortable in person as he is in virtual competitions.
Yeah, I think he has talked about kind of the stress piece for him is big with the in-person competitions. But yeah, I saw on the EJJ Q1 and Q2, he had the top average piece per minute stat for both those quarters.
Yeah, he crushes it online. He just hasn't been quite able to pull it out in person. Next entrant from Spain.
Laura Aizpurua de Arteque.
She was 31st last year, third at the Spanish Championships. Only has 2 competitions since, in my data anyway, which includes the Spanish competitions since last year's Worlds. So there's another person from Spain who's a lot like a lot of the folks from Spain. They tend to have only Spanish competitions between Worlds, and not very many of them necessarily.
And I don't know if we'll see them in pairs. I'm confident we'll see Laura and her team in the data generated top 10. But one thing to note about Laura is that she pairs with and also on her team is Rafa,
Mm.
her husband, which is, I would say, fairly unique, but also something that you have in common with her.
Yes, I'm also performing at an elite level with my elite level spouse. Our last Spanish competitor, Alejandro Clemente Leon. My notes here say Alejandro! Exclamation point. He was 8th last year and was prior to that a 2-time world champion, 2022 and 23, and 3-time Spanish champion. If you want more on him, there's a great episode where he was just an amazing person to talk to. Peace Talks episode number 23 is all about him.
Alejandro has also been competing in a number of EJJs over the past year, particularly in the summer, and has noted that he's traveling quite a bit for work and bringing the puzzles with him and competing from different hotel rooms and places all over the world.
I love that people are doing that. That is amazing.
Yes, but that C context, hotel room lighting,
Oh,
often
not
terrible.
wrong. It is worth saying that in the algorithm that I use to calculate the Peace Talks rating, it does discount certain kinds of competitions. So virtual competitions, for example, so they tend to not hurt your scoring as much as in-person competitions. So I like that because that allows people to do things like try out different contexts, or just be where they are. And not that anybody's desperately waiting to see how their Peace Talks ranks are going, but it doesn't hinder as much those kinds of competitions where context is not really well controlled.
That makes sense.
Next person on the list is our last Australian, Caitlin McGregor. She is top 3 in all the Australian state competitions. She's new to Worlds this year. She's mentioned as a person to watch in the episode 21 of Peace Talks, where we talk to the Aussie All Stars, as among other people. So if you want to hear more about people, Australians to watch, go check out that episode. And also, it's worth mentioning that the episode with David Donaldson, where we talk about, among other things, Canadian puzzling, she has a lot of other people that she mentions that are worth keeping an eye out from Canada as well.
Yeah, I couldn't find Caitlin on Instagram,
Well, she must not exist.
or she might be an urban legend.
Coming up towards the end here, this one surprised me. I will be interested to hear your perspective. This is a person from Ireland, Emma Quirk.
Oh, yeah. I'm not surprised.
So Emma was the UK and Portuguese champion. She was 33rd last year, and the Portugal win really kicked her into the top level here. What do you know about her?
Well, last year's World Jigsaw Puzzle Championship was her first puzzle competition ever. I think the highlight for her was coming in fourth on a semifinal puzzle, Flower Jungle. Of course, that was an unreleased puzzle, so that was, I think it does kind of let us see how previous experience with certain puzzles might affect like less experienced people. She said that she had hardly done any 500-piece puzzles before last year's Worlds because they're hard to get in Ireland. And just
Mm-hmm.
like her usual puzzling, she had always stuck to 1,000-piece puzzles. But yeah, she really shone in the semifinal. The Flower Jungle puzzle, which she said was like the perfect puzzle for her. She said she enjoys busy puzzles with bright colors. She finds that she has strong attention to details and a good memory for different elements of puzzles. So, yeah, imagine being at your first puzzle competition ever and then sitting in the front for the finals with your own table and all the cameras. So she did place 30th in the finals, and she's gotten more competition experience that you noted since then. Emma's an elementary school teacher, and she set up a jigsaw puzzle club in her school, and she puzzles with her students in class. She's also really outdoorsy, and she loves hiking, surfing, and sea swimming. I was asking her about the water temperature in Ireland and how it compares with the water temperature in New Hampshire, which I find very cold. I think it's colder, but we were speaking different temperature scales, but I'm still
Mm-hmm.
pretty sure it's colder than New Hampshire water. A couple more things about Emma. She says that this year she'll be more prepared for Worlds because she's been practicing. She said she never used to do the edges first or even flip over all the pieces and would work out of the box. She's been practicing more landscape puzzles as well. And another fun fact about Emma is that she set up the Irish JPA and is the president.
Awesome. Go her. All right. I've got 2 people left on my list. You want to guess who's next?
Ooh, yeah, well, two Polish people, obviously. Ooh, okay, this is fun. Well, I would guess hmm, I would guess Victor is next, and Veronica is the last.
And you'd be correct. Victor is next. Victor Katzpracek. My notes for Victor say Victor. Again, we had an episode 22 is devoted to Polish puzzlers. So go check out that episode for more, especially on him. Victor's a great interview. He has lots of interesting things to say, delightful as well. So it's definitely worth your time. He is a prolific puzzler. He has recorded 42 events since June of 2024. Back, remember what I was saying? Like we have some people for whom there are like 2 other events besides Worlds. Victor is not one of those people. He was 42nd last year third in the Euros, second at the Polish national competition, second at the Czech competition, first at Finland, and there have been two Slovenian competitions, national competitions since the last Worlds. He was first at the first one of those. It sort of comes through here, but just to kind of say it out loud, it's hard to overestimate how much better he is this year than he was last year, and he was already really good last year. He was 42nd last year. He's extremely thoughtful on his approach to puzzling, and I think that shows. He puts in the practice. He does the work. So not at all surprised to find him here.
I would add that the number of puzzle competitions on record for him is intentional and it's part of his training strategy. So he talked about wanting to feel at Worlds this year comfortable in that competition environment. And so he's definitely been putting himself in those situations as part of his training strategy. One other rumor about Victor is that he's much better on Ravensburger cut than other brands. And so kind of give him a boost on the Ravensburger puzzles.
Yeah, that's a really great point. We didn't get a chance to talk to him quite as in depth as I had hoped to, because again, he's extremely thoughtful. But I did want to ask him that, and I didn't get a chance to, as to how much of the Ravensburger cut he's memorized. I know that some folks, like when we talked to Connor, I think Connor has some of it, but not all of it memorized.
Yeah, Kati is another.
Kati is one of those. I wouldn't be surprised to find that Victor has maybe all of it memorized.
All right. And then Veronica, number
Yes.
2 at Worlds last year, current Polish champion. What else
Urban
am I
legend
missing?
identified by
Urban
E.B. Caron
legend.
last
No
year.
longer an urban legend.
Yes, actual legend.
Now she's a Peace Talks guest.
That's right. That's right. She was on that episode 22. We didn't get a lot of her time, but I appreciate the time that we were able to get from her. She was second last year only to Kristen. She was second in Euros behind Kati. She was first in the Polish nationals. My notes here are basically, if anyone's having a great day, they can beat her. Otherwise, she's very likely to take it. Right. So you have to be an elite person having a great day. Otherwise, I think she takes it.
And I will share thoughts that Victor has shared with me, which is that if it's a difficult puzzle in the finals, it's Veronica's win.
I feel that's right. And I think obviously, as we've talked about, anybody in this list is a contender for that, especially if they're having a great day. They're a contender for first place. But with Kristen out and Mercedes out, I think the odds have improved tremendously that Veronica can end up winning here. And if she does, I will be so excited, because to me, this echoes Kristen from last year, like this sort of humble person who's just doing some puzzling, and is not really out and proud about it, who can just dominate the competition. What a joy to watch that is. If I'm understanding this right, most of the people that that the data identified as interesting are also the people that you went out and found other information about.
Yeah, the ones I didn't know. Mm-hmm.
It is always surprising to me, that the data surfaces people that I'm not familiar with, which I don't follow the scene so closely that I would know everybody, but that you're always just right there with all of the things, all the people that the data say are interesting. You're already on top of that. So
I try. It really helps when they're on Instagram.
It's true, but you have, all kinds of people are on Instagram. You have to find the ones who are actually interested in talking. Now, for all I know, you talk to absolutely everybody, and that wouldn't honestly surprise me all that much. But your hit rate is really high in terms of matching with what the data says.
Thank you. Well, I've gotten more comfortable with just like sliding into people's DMs. Now I can like name drop Peace Talks.
Well, I think that you're so out about being the person who's like curious about everybody that I suspect some people are like, well, I must not be as good as I thought because EB hasn't reached out to me.
Oh, well, you know what? You can reach out to me for other reasons. I got hit up for some puzzle matchmaking this summer, and that was a first for me. So,
is this romance matchmaking or pairs
fingers
teams
crossed? Romance.
That's awesome.
Pairs and teams matchmaking, anyone can do that, and I'm happy to do that too. But I'm here for the romance
Oh well,
matchmaking.
all right. Well, we're gonna have to spin off a podcast for that. Like that's got to be its
Oh
own
my
series.
gosh, that would be great.
That would be
Oh,
great.
yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears over to the pairs. Some quick background around the pair structure. There are 4 rounds of pairs prelims, 200 max pairs per round. This is another, you get 2 puzzles, you choose one. You get 75 minutes as a pair. 85 people will qualify into the next round. The playoffs, which are the country specific things, are the same here as they were in individuals. However that manifests itself. Clearly I don't have a full grasp on that. Semifinals are 2 rounds of 180 pairs, with 160 coming directly from the prior qualifiers and 20 from the playoffs. The semis is one unpublished 500-piece puzzle where you'll have 60 minutes, and the top 50 qualifiers move on to finals where there are 100 pairs. You get a 1,000-piece unpublished puzzle and 120 minutes to finish it. I did the same sort of approach to heat difficulty. This isn't particularly in depth or anything, but the easiest round in terms of other people that you would have to compete against is D by quite a long ways. And then the hardest one is B, but not by a lot more than A or C.
B, unlucky letter.
Let's look at pairs and we'll take the same sort of approach. We've talked about a lot of these folks, so we probably won't spend as much time on them.
Right.
What I've done is I've taken the top 10 because otherwise we'll be here all night. Again, this is the top 10 based on the overall performance that they've done over the last year. And this is a simple combination of people's individual scores because a lot with pairs and teams, you don't have a lot of instances where a pair or a team is regularly competing. Pairs and teams, they tend to mix things up a fair amount, or they don't compete as often. So I'm not using any pair specific numbers or any team specific numbers. I'm taking the individual numbers and combining them. And so based on that information, it could be fairly wildly off, as certain pairs work much better than they do as individuals, and some pairs work actually less well as they do in individuals, and that holds for teams as well. So again, mostly just looking to take a cut of who might be interesting to watch. We're going to start from number 10 and work our way up to the top. So the first one on my list is Eduardo Moreno Turcu and Coral Cervantes Dominguez.
Interesting.
So that's a team from Spain. There could be some sort of Spain grade inflation here, so keep that in mind. But Eduardo was 50th last year in pairs with Alejandro Harasquaro. And last year, Coral was not in the finals.
Now, notably, Eduardo, Edu, is the older brother of Gabriel, Gabi, and he is the slower and older brother. I don't think the brothers are allowed to pair up together because of the age rules.
Oh, because neither one of them has to be over some age, 18 or something.
Right. Yeah, I'm not I don't know if they've changed it this year for pairs, but previously they hadn't been old enough to compete together. I think usually in the Spanish national championship they do compete together and do well together. Yeah, it looks like they placed the two brothers, the Moreno Turcu brothers, placed 7th this year in Spanish pairs. But that's why they historically they've been split up into different pairs.
Fascinating. Well, it would be interesting to see if they move across that age requirement if they decide to pair up and compete together.
They're a great family. I got to meet them in 2023. It's great to see them sticking with it. Almost there. They're almost old enough to compete together at Worlds.
Moving up to the next pairs on my list from Germany, Denise Bode and Tamar Visser.
Yeah, I don't know much about Denise, but I did slide into Tamar's DMs. Tamar Fieser. She is the 2025 Danish national champion. She started puzzling because her mom puzzled, and before finding out about speed puzzling, started timing herself because she found just regular puzzling a bit boring. So after learning about speed puzzling competitions, she started training a year ago. She says she's very analytical and focused on improving her puzzling process, and she thinks she's quickly able to notice what could go better and apply it moving forward. She also likes to challenge herself and do puzzles she doesn't like. because she finds that she learns the most from those puzzles. And fun fact, well, actually, a few fun facts. One, she says she's not good at Jan von Hasteren puzzles, unlike most Danish puzzles. I know.
Whoa.
She's also an artist, which she thinks helps with seeing subtle color differences. She especially likes doing gradients, which you don't find in Jan van Hasteren puzzles. And final fun fact, she used to play draughts competitively for 10 years, aka checkers.
Oh, you can play checkers competitively? I realize the irony of asking that on a competitive jigsaw puzzling podcast, but
And yeah, she went to European and World Championships for draughts. And she now brings
hmm,
this focus on like the competition and knowing how to handle the pressure of competitions to speed puzzling.
fascinating. Next up on the list is the first of two from the Czech Republic, Jana Andrušková and Katrina Klinkova. They were one of the few pairs who has prior competitions, which is to say they were in last year's Worlds. So last year they tied for 12th with the Brigitas, Brigitte Winkler and Brigitte Poza.
Yeah, Jana, we know as the 2019 World Jigsaw Puzzle Championship solo champion. She took a few
Mm.
years off, but returned to Worlds last year.
Up next from Spain, we've already started talking about him, but Gabriel Moreno Torcu and Alejandro Harascago. Gabi was 30th last year in pairs with Soraya Perez Carriol, and Alejandro was 50th with Eduardo last year. I noticed that Gabi is participating, I think, at the individual competition this year. Do we know if this is the first year he's was qualified for it? Because I didn't notice him qualify or competing last year in individuals.
He could be 14.
He does really well on the Spanish scene, not surprisingly. And so it would be really interesting to see him fully
Yeah.
able to compete
Yeah.
on the international scene and see how he does. Because again, we've got sort of Spanish grade inflation due to the fact that the Spanish folks tend to compete amongst themselves. And so when they get out and compete in other competitions, that helps us really get a sense of their capabilities. Next up on the list,
Is it Katia and Kiara?
it is Katia and Chiara, a mixed team of Germany and Italy. So Chiara, I guess she really qualifies more than most people do for being Germany because she's actually living
Right.
there. They were second last year and only by 25
Mhm.
seconds. So another pair that has previously competed in Worlds.
Yeah, and I think it is, I know you mentioned this, but I think it is important to highlight that your numbers don't take into account the level of like practice and familiarity and comfort that pairs have with each other, which
Absolutely correct.
is one thing that if I were doing my own predictions, I could take into account.
That's true. Yeah. And that is often where you tend to do better than me is that you're able to factor in a lot of those relationship history sorts of components to things.
Definitely ones to watch.
Moving up to the next team on the list, Melissa Townsend and Rihanna Erickson from Australia, half of the Aussie All Stars. Melissa was 10th with Hannah Farthing last time around, and Rihanna was 17th with Katrina Coleman. So interesting to see the teams mixing it up. I know that Melissa and Rihanna have been doing some pairing up together at least recently.
Yeah, I think they explained why they were switching things up on their podcast episode. And I just have to give a shout out to Rihanna because I loved hearing about her fangirl history. And now I'm like a big fangirl of the fangirl. So
Anytime anybody is that much into like just wholesomely into something, it makes me also excited for that. Like just hearing her tell that story made me also like sort of have some of that same energy. And as I said to her on the podcast, and I think this is likely to be true, is that sometime probably this year somebody will be watching her who is in her situation, fangirling over her. And so she's now been able to live both sides of
I mean, it'll definitely be me.
that. Well, yes, true, but I was thinking more of like somebody who's aspiring
Oh,
to
yeah,
be
like an
a competitor,
Australian. Yeah,
an
yeah,
Australian who wants to be on the sort of maybe go to Worlds someday.
yeah.
That person is probably watching Rihanna, somebody like that, and being like, ah, I just want to be like her. Next is the other entry by the Czech Republic, Teresa and Marketa.
Of course.
First last year.
Yeah.
So not surprising that they're on the list.
Definitely not. Well, I heard that they're going to defend their gold.
All right. We're down to the top 3. Can you guess the order
Tough
that
one.
their historical performance, according to my esoteric
Hmm.
algorithm, has come up with?
All right. So Hazela and Alejandro have got to be on there. 2023 pairs world champions. Not that you factor in the pair performance, but I think they should be on there. Then I'm curious if Victor and Natalia are on there or not. I think Natalia's gotten a lot stronger and had some good data in the past year, but she wasn't on the top 20, so that's a little questionable. I wonder, are Veronica and Anna on there? Some other possibilities would be Hannah and Rosa and Mari and Hannah. Oh, I got to see a nod. Is that the nonverbals giving you away, Rob?
You will find out as soon as you assert something.
Okay. Oh boy. Well, this is a tough one. Really tough one. So let's put Hannah and Rosa in 3, Victor and Natalia in 2, and Hazela and Alejandro in 1. Oh, but I skipped Veronica and I don't know. Just tell me.
Fair enough. All right. Well, we'll just continue the pattern. In the 3rd spot is Natalia Potashik and Victor Kasperchek. They were 8th last year. And as we talked about before, Victor has improved pretty substantially. Natalia has also improved.
A little bit about Natalia, since she wasn't featured on the Polish Powerhouse podcast. Interesting fact, Natalia works as a robot programmer and she has projects in different places around the world. She says that her job is actually pretty boring and the travel is what makes it interesting, but traveling for work also makes it hard to train in terms of time and
Mm,
space to puzzle. She says that in the lead up to this year's World Jigsaw Puzzle Championship, she's been very busy at work and not having much time to puzzle, but she's starting a long vacation just before the championship, which will hopefully free up a little time right at the end to, get back into speed puzzling shape. Going back a little bit, so Natalia got into speed puzzling in the middle of 2023, and previously she had always done larger puzzles, 2,000 pieces or higher, sort of similar to another Polish puzzler,
mm-hmm,
Christian.
mm-hmm.
And in terms of competition, she said she couldn't find much information about Polish competitions on the internet. And so she started looking outside Poland, and that's how she decided to go to Worlds in 2024. And at the same time, she started talking to Victor, and she and Victor have complementary strengths. So Natalia likes large patches of color like big skies
Mm.
and hates busy puzzles. And Victor is a good partner complementing her on those strengths and weaknesses.
Moving on to number 2 on the list, Veronica and Anna Kazana from
Mm.
Poland. Veronica was 60th last year with a different Anna Deal. And Anna
Mm.
Kazana didn't do pairs last year. So this is very similar to the Natalia Victor setup, where Veronica is clearly a very great puzzler and Anna is a actually really great puzzler herself, but is not quite at the same level. So they fall in the same sort of way that the Natalia Victor pairing does.
Do you have data on Anna's performance at the Polish national championship? I know that one's a little harder to find because there isn't a link on the WJPF site.
There are a few different competitions that aren't on the World Jigsaw Puzzling Federation website. that I've had to go find, and that is one of them. But I do have that information because I did go hunt that down. She has 7 competitions, 3 of which were last year's Worlds. She was 42nd in the European Championship finals, and 4th in the Polish Championship finals.
After, the top 3 Polish powerhouse, right?
After the Polish powerhouse. And I should say, this is a great time to mention this, that I have a bunch of data that then gentleman I've mentioned before, I think Jacob Palawa, has taken and put into a place where people can access it publicly and do some visualizations, which is really great. So if you want to see this data and play around with it and see what he has done and added to it, because he's added a lot of extra stuff to it, go to puzzleboard.streamlit.app and you can play around with all this data yourself.
Cool.
So, any guesses as to who's at the top then?
Oh, yes, I get a bonus guess now. All right, this should not be as hard as it was before. Hazela and Alejandro?
Hazela and Alejandro. Yeah. They're 4th last year, and they are both highly rated individuals.
Right, because Hazela showed up in your top 20 as well, so that makes
Correct.
sense.
Correct. Yeah, there's a little bit of Spanish inflation potentially going on here. Again, we're mostly looking to pull people that are interesting to talk about, and so this team definitely qualifies.
2023 World Pairs Champions.
Not for nothing.
Let's move on to teams.
Let's move on to teams. Really quick about the team structure. There are 4 rounds of preliminaries with 100 teams each. You get 4 1,000-piece puzzles and pick 2. You have a few minutes to choose. There are 2 hours total for that competition. You can start the first puzzle and change your mind, but you can't change to a different puzzle that wasn't in your choice of 2. So you can start off on a puzzle, and if you decide that that's not the one you want, you can change to the other puzzle of the 2 that you chose and start that. Why you would do that, I have no idea. But that is a thing that, according to the rules, you can do. 25 qualifiers move on. And the finals has 100 teams that qualify, plus 5 teams that come through the country-based playoffs that we've been talking about in every round. In the finals, every team gets 2 1,000-piece unpublished puzzles, and you can choose what order, but you're doing both of those puzzles, and they have 2 hours to do that. I went through and looked at the easiest and hardest heats. The easiest heat is heat D, and by a ways, and then by a similar ways the other direction, the hardest is heat C. So if you're in heat B, not so bad this time around.
All right, let's hear some teams we should be watching out for.
And we've done a lot of talking about most of the people on these teams, so we'll probably go through this pretty quick, but do raise your hand, not that I think you won't, when there's somebody that we want to talk about. Taking the same order as we did last time, we're starting off with the Damn Good Puzzlers from Canada. Damn Good Puzzlers are Devin Donaldson, Katie Delude-Sicard, Danielle Engelson, and Tess McLaughlin. Again, you can hear all about all of those people on the Peace Talks episode with Devin, where she talks about all the folks on her team.
Yeah, and a little bit more about Katie, or Katsi. That would be the French pronunciation, but she said that she's totally fine with English pronunciation. I think of Katsi as Canadian Sarah. Canadian Sarah Schuler.
That paints an instant picture.
Because her mom and aunt participated in 1,000-piece no image Ravensburger competitions in the late 1990s to early 2000s in Quebec. So she practiced with them when she was young. And then she said she forgot about speed puzzling until she saw the World Jigsaw Puzzle Championship recap video at the end of 2023. She said after she saw Alejandro win, her boyfriend told her that she could totally do that. And she tried it and loved it immediately. She says that because of her family training and the fact that her family was always in these competitions, that historically and still like ongoing, game stores have them in Canada. They don't give you the image. She never puzzled with the image. And she thinks that this led her to develop good skills at being able to pick pieces and place them without the image by quickly recognizing textures and colors. But she also barely looks at the image and does not own a box top holder.
I have a vision of her just tossing the box top over her shoulder. I won't be needing this.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up puzzling like that too. Like looking at the image was cheating, but I
Mhm.
have been pretty successful in like training myself to use the image. It like goes out the window with puzzle twist because I like tell myself like, oh, the image has like no information when actually like it does have a lot of information still, even though there's the twist to it.
Mhm.
But with regular puzzles, I'm much better than I used to be at using the image.
Worth noting is that Devin was on the A team last year, the EH team,
Hmm.
which got 44th.
Yeah, and Kati is new to Worlds this year.
I
So
believe
yeah,
all the
this
rest of them are
team is
too.
a
Yeah.
yeah, new newcomers.
Yeah, we're gonna see a fair amount of that as we go, actually, where we see some people that we know and some people that are new. Moving up to the next team on the list is from Germany. Our first entry from Germany, Eat Our Puzzle Dust, with Merle
Mm.
Kleeman, Amke Eggers, Laura Pescher, and Clara Vesselkamp. Merle and Lara probably were, oh man, I'm going to get myself in trouble. There's people with teams that are interesting to pronounce. uh, were on Steinzeit, 27th last year. Amka was on a team called Just Filling the Gaps, which was 66th. And Clara was on Big Bobby Tables, team that placed 100 last year.
Those are some fun names.
I know.
I think Clara came in 14th in the individual finals. Does that sound right?
Let's find out. Fun fact about Clara is that I have a spreadsheet that I use to process data when it comes in for different competitions, and it has examples of things that need to be transformed where I have like little Excel formulas that take something and make it into something else. And Clara's name is actually one of the one of the examples. So
Hmm.
just randomly, I needed an example and I pulled Clara's name in. So I'm well familiar with the name, although we've never met or spoken.
Hmm. Actually, she came in 12th in the solo finals.
The next team from Germany, the Fast Four, Mara Haller, Anna
Hmm.
Menges, Magdalena Alberti, and Nina Schicks. Mara was on a team that finished 94th. Anna was on a team that finished 93rd. Magdalena was on a team that finished 79th. And then Nina was not in the finals last year.
Right. I don't think Nina went last year. She's been someone whose name I've noticed and is someone that I have not been successful in tracking down online or getting information on. But she was second in the German national championship behind Kati.
Up next from the USA, the Whimsy Pieces with Mari Black, Hannah Siegler, Hannah Siegler.
Hannah. It's a Hannah.
I'm all
Yep.
Europed up now. Hannah Siegler, Sammy Brownlow, and Karen Nil. Mari and Sammy were part of Wicked Quick last year, which finished 16th. And Hannah and Karen weren't in the finals. I think both of them are new to Worlds this year.
They are new to Worlds this year. Definitely a US team to watch for sure. I'll be cheering for them.
Speaking of US teams, up next is Dome Sweet Dome, one of my favorite pun names.
Building on last year's pun, when in Dome.
Yes, that unlocked a whole series of names for me. I appreciate you don't see a lot of dome related puns, it's usually
Right.
pieces
Yeah.
and things like that. So I appreciate
Yeah.
the whole other area, and dome is just so fertile for creating puns from. Anyway, that's Kyle Cosson, Hannah Doyle, Emma Williamson, and Jasmine Lambert. And I think the only one who was actually here, or at least the only one who had a finals finish in teams last year, was Kyle with, which you said, when in Dome, which finished 12th.
I guess one thing to note and celebrate is that Kyle and Hannah, who are pairing, are sponsored by Cobble Hill. And I just want to give them a shout out to supporting puzzlers because, as we've talked about, it is an expensive trip and I'd like to see more sponsorship.
Yeah, agreed. I love that they have done that. Obviously, Cobble Hill previously supporting
Golden State Puzzlers.
Golden State Puzzlers, thank you, who are not appearing this year. I had a great conversation with the person who oversees that at the Portland Jigsaw Masters. I'm looking to get her on to just talk more about Cobble Hill and their
Hmm.
forays into this area. So fingers crossed we can have a conversation about that in a couple of months.
Yeah, Linda is so great and so genuine in her love for the speed puzzling community.
Yeah. So the first team from Spain on the list is the Puzzle Marauders with Isela Arranz Toro, Alejandro Clemente Leon, Laura Aispura Darteche, and Rafael Emieva Gomez. Alejandro was ninth last year with Nonstop. Gisela was not in the finals, and Laura and Rafael were 40th with the Peace Seekers.
Did we call out the Spanish teams last year and say, like, hey, you could make a power team? What are you doing? I feel like this might have been a response to that because I'm pretty sure this is the team that has won not just this year's Spanish Nationals, but also 2024.
Mm.
And last year, when we recorded either this episode or the post podcast, we were saying, why not send that team to Worlds? So now we get to see them at Worlds, and I'm excited about it.
Wish granted. Anything else you want to wish for while you're getting wishes granted?
I mean, I'd like to see some Americans in all 3 top 10s. That would be a nice wish. A little maybe harder this year.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we'll see. Oh, wait, I have more wishes. I want an urban legend. I want like 5 urban legends. That would be the best.
I was at a competition in Seattle this last weekend, and the funnest thing is that, it's a slightly smaller scale, but a person that nobody knew who was in their first competition and really wasn't, I think, wasn't intending to compete all that hard, got second place by like 3 seconds. And it was like, who are you? So I love those, like the
Yeah.
people who just sort of suddenly appear and you're like, you're interesting. What are you doing? Where have you been?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Up next from Spain, Todas a la Calle.
So the brothers that we were talking about before, Edu and Gabi Moreno Tarcu, and Soraya Perez Carriol, and Alejandro Erascago.
Last year, Soraya and Alejandro were on the same team. I don't actually have the team name in front of me for some reason, which finished 30th. And Gabrielle and Eduardo were 42nd on a different team. With that in mind, you want to take a stab at who might be third?
So third, I'm going to say Aussie All-Stars.
The third on my list is the Czech Puzzle Queens.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they were second last year. And that's Jana Andruskova, Katarina Klinkova, Teresa Koptikova, and Marketa Frieslerova. So your feeling, though, is that they're potentially underrated here, which is not surprising. Again, we're not doing anything that takes into account chemistry amongst the team. We're just taking individual performances over the course of the last year and combining them in a way that gets us something that we can talk about. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to find out that teams that have worked really well in the past are perhaps being underrated.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's really nice about this team is that it is the same as last year, as is the Aussie All Stars. So, like you noted earlier, there does tend to be a lot of switching. And we did see that with the Czech team from 2023 to 2024 with the switching of 2 of the members. But now they're returning. They did place second last year. So last year, I think going into Worlds, I said they were the team to beat. And the team that beat them, the Busy Birdies, is not going to Worlds this year. So I think they're still a force and a team to beat.
Well, according to the rating that I have here, there's a couple more teams to talk about that they may have to work through. The next one on the way up is the Aussie All Stars. That's Hannah Farthing, Melissa Townsend, Katrina Coleman, and Rihanna Erickson. They were 6th last year. They've been putting in a fair amount of effort practicing as teams and as pairs as well.
And after hearing them on your podcast, I'm definitely going to be rooting for them.
They're kind of hard not to root for. They're just they were a lot of fun. Somebody asked me the other day if recording them was a challenge, and I was like, nope, exactly the opposite. They were polite but hilarious and a lot of fun to talk to.
All right, so I think I can guess the top team.
All right, take a shot.
Well, it's got to be the international super team, the World Jigsaw Jacks, Kiara, Kati, Hannah, and Victor.
You are correct. This is the EJJ squad, the Euro Jigsaw Jacks. Obviously, a reference to the Euro Jigsaw Jam. Last year, Chiara was on Jig Spaghetti at 8th place. Kati was on Red Fruit Lovers at 7th. Hana was not on in the finals last year, and Victor was looking for that one piece at 13th. This is a hand selected set of people from across a bunch of different countries. All signs point to them being heavy favorites.
Yeah, they won the European Jigsaw Puzzle Championship this summer.
I was talking to somebody this weekend, and they made a case for the fact that they didn't really enjoy the fact that internationally selected super champions across a bunch of different countries were participating, because in some ways they felt that was sort of antithetical to a world's competition. I hadn't really put much thought into it before that. I was like, I can see both sides. Like, I love a super team, but if we felt like Worlds was intended to be more towards a like country specific battle, if you will, this does sort of not adhere to that spirit. That being said, there's nothing in the rules about it. I'm curious as to what your point of view is on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult because on the one hand, I wouldn't want to see someone like Kiara excluded from a German team because she's from Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Because she lives in Germany, she's able to practice with people in Germany. And I think like their people have ties or origins in multiple countries.
I think you'd struggle to say that's what's going on here, though.
Right, that's true. So just kind of starting out, I think it's hard to, I think if you go one way, there might, like if you go in the other direction and prohibit it, you might see situations that feel unfair towards people who were born in one country and live in another.
Sure. 100% agree. I guess my question for you, just to kind of poke at the specific thing, is what is your opinion about a super team like this that is clearly picked from across different countries, not in its impact on what a rule tightening might look like, but like, is this fall into your idea of what Worlds is all about?
That's an interesting question. And actually, so I'll answer based on like more local version of that question. So this summer we had Connecticut state championships, and Connecticut is a small state. You can drive across it in 2 to 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So we had puzzlers from New Jersey and New York, and many puzzlers from Massachusetts, which, according to Eric Goulet, who is going to Worlds for the first time and is a data nerd like you, Massachusetts is the best state in terms of puzzlers, or like the fastest puzzlers
Mm-hmm.
on average live in Massachusetts. And because of that, well, like I was on a team with a puzzler from Massachusetts, Tiffany Medeiros, and a puzzler from New Jersey, Kat Dilks, and then my husband, Dan. People asked me, so I guess for the Connecticut State Championship, what they do is like for the solos, they do say like you're not the Connecticut State Champion if you're not from the state or you don't live in the state.
And that is often true of the country competitions as well.
Right, it is. Yeah, which is why like Tyla is the New Zealand national champion, even though Katrina beat Tyla.
Yep.
But then for pairs and teams, it's just like no rules. No one has to be from Connecticut. And I didn't care that much about it. Like, didn't really bother me. Yeah, I think my husband and I we were pretty far down the list. Maybe seventh. That sounds better than I expected.
I was going to say, you and I need to talk about what pretty far down the list really looks like.
I mean, we were like, but like, if you were like, oh, like, which pair has both people from Connecticut? Like, we were the top pair with both people from Connecticut, but like, a lot of people beat us.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I would say at the kind of like local state level, someone did ask me, like, does it bother you? And I was like, no, doesn't really bother me.
So the same thing holds at the world's level, in your opinion.
I don't know. Haven't thought about it
Yeah,
enough, I guess.
sort of where I was. I was like, yeah, I can see it. I can also see the other side of it. Part of the point I made at the time is like, if this was the Olympics, I would feel more strongly about country adherence, right? Like that is very clearly a country specific activity. This one was less clear to me. I had never contextualized it, even though it's worlds and a lot of things are people are country specific. I never really contextualized it as a country specific activity, but I could definitely see that side.
Yeah, I'm curious if we'll see more of it in the future too. But also like, where do you draw the line? I think it's hard to draw the line because it really feels like, I don't know, not a big deal if like one out of the four is from a different country. And so yeah, I think, it's hard to make rules about it.
The world's rules that specifically say mixed teams are those that do not have a majority of members from the same,
Mm,
i.e., 3 out of 4 of the same nationality.
mhm.
So, well, I just wanted to kind of gain some additional perspective on that thought because I hadn't really put a lot of deep thought into it, and it was an interesting thing.
Yeah, I think other people probably like haven't thought that much about it and, might be thinking more about it after this year, making their own international super teams.
Yeah, if you have a perspective, let us know. That takes us to the top of the teams. We've covered teams, we've covered pairs, we've covered individuals. Anybody we left off the list from any of those that you want to talk about?
Yes, there is one team that I really want to talk about. They are the O's and Ahs, Inga Sino, Ellen Sino,
Oh yeah.
Toon Brat, and Scene Brat. So Inga we talked about earlier.
Hmm.
Ellen is Inga's sister, also an unsuccessful or only moderately successful boulderer. And they're bringing two notorious Dutch puzzlers with them who multiple people from the Netherlands were like, they won't be in Rob's data. So I'm curious if they do show up in your data.
Well, now I gotta know. No, 100% not in my data. Which means that they've done no visible competitions.
No visible solo competitions.
Correct. Yes, good point.
So I'm pretty sure in the Netherlands they may, at least in the Jan van Hasteren competitions, they force you to choose. Um, so at least historically, I don't think you could do the solo and the pairs.
Oh, interesting.
So this is the team that has won pairs. They beat Ellen and Inga by a lot.
Wow.
Um, and I find this team fascinating.
Is it
Um,
because they're enigmatic?
a little bit,
No, all right.
but also, so the Brat sisters had never done a Ravensburger puzzle prior to Dutch Nationals in 2025. And so the Sino sisters have been like trying so hard to get them to start practicing Ravensburger puzzles because they're so fast at Jan van Hasteren puzzles. And what I've heard is that they are still not really into Ravensburger, but they've gotten more used to them. And they're already talking about how happy they're going to be after Worlds when they can do their Jan van Hasteren puzzles again.
That is crazy. I just love the idea of them looking at like a picture of something, like like a landscape or something, and being like, "Ew, gross. Why would you want to do that?"
Yeah. And actually, their team shirts have O's for the Sino sisters and A's for or A's for the Brat sisters. And the A shirts have like multiple Jan van Hasteren references that Ellen Sino needed to translate for me. Um, so they all have their own strengths. Scene is a chaotic puzzler on her own, so she actually doesn't like puzzling individually. but she knows what everyone else is doing, and is really good at feeding people the pieces they need. Tune is really good at the overall structure of a puzzle, orienting things, doing the edge, and doesn't allow teammates to place any pieces into the puzzle frame unless she knows exactly where they go. Ellen and Inga are dropping their family teammates, Dad Jan and Ellen's husband Eric, this year from the team. And they really want to get into the top 10. And I'm definitely rooting for them to be in the top 10 so they can get their cubes.
I'm also now rooting for them as well, although the fact that I don't have any data on these people is driving me crazy.
That's what I'm here for, Rob. That's
Driving
what
me
I bring
crazy.
to the table. Hey, the urban legends. I love that they haven't yet been brainwashed into buying every 500 piece Ravensburger they can find.
So you're saying everybody else is slaves to the Ravensburger machine?
Including me.
All right. On that note, since we're talking a lot about who to watch at Worlds, where can you watch this? Primarily, if you search for World Jigsaw Puzzle Competition on YouTube, you can find it there. There's usually the English stream. I didn't actually see the non-English streams hosted in the World Jigsaw Puzzle Association's or Federation's YouTube page, but I wonder if maybe they have country-specific ones. This year, hosting the English stream are Jim Eakins, announcer extraordinaire. He does a lot of Euro Jigsaw Jam streams. Also co-hosted with me on a couple of Portland Jigsaw Master streams this year. Big fan of his. And relatedly, Michelle Casper, founder of the Euro Jigsaw Jam, who we have a long interview with on episode 20 of Peace Talks. They will be combining and splitting duties amongst those 22 different competitions. It's a lot for anybody to take on. I'll probably be on a stream or 2 or 3. Keep track of my Instagram, the Peace Talks Instagram at peace_talks for updates on that. If you need more stats, we talked about puzzleboard.streamlit.app by Jacob Palawa. It's a great place to fiddle around with some data. We also have a Jigsaw Puzzle Stats Nerds Discord. The conversations there are long bouts of silence populated by intense discussions over algorithms. So if you're into that kind of thing, seek us out, find us. I will be going to Worlds, as we've talked about. If you see me, say hi. I'll be bringing a limited number of stickers with me. So happy to give out stickers. Always would love to take pictures with anybody who would be willing, because I always like to see people who have actually listened to things in the wild. Also, I think it is worth shouting out that a couple of speed puzzlers have started a speed puzzling news site, speedpuzzlingnews.net, with Fruzy Wilhelm and Rika Ukrainian. They have a couple articles up currently, and one by Fruzy has a World Jigsaw Puzzle Championship survival guide. So if you're going to Worlds, check that out. Editor Rob here. EB had a couple of other thank yous she wanted to toss in, so I'm adding them here.
I just want to say thank you to everyone who shared tips and names with me for this episode and answered my questions over text. And especially a big shout out to Jasper Lee, whose tips came in the form of a multi-page Google Doc that he shared with me.
EB, will you be watching Worlds this year?
I will, and I will be watching for you, Rob, and cheering you on.
We will be doing our best job to be wearing colors that allow us to be visible in the background of the important players. That being said, that tactic has been adopted since we started doing it a couple of years ago by lots more people. So turns out finding the right color to look for in the background is becoming more and more challenging. But I appreciate that you'll be out there looking for me. Remind folks where they can find out more about you, EB.
You can find me on Instagram at Puzzle Free or Die.
Excellent. Well, as per usual, I appreciate the deep fountain of insight that you bring to this conversation. It's always much more than I ever can imagine. I don't know how you keep all of this stuff in your head, but I'm glad that you come to these episodes and share that with us.
Well, I love hearing about the data and seeing where my own thoughts line up with the data, where we have our differences. So I really enjoy doing this with you, Rob.
And maybe we'll come back afterwards and do some debriefing.
Yeah, and maybe sometime I can do your own speed round of circular puzzle or square puzzle, but I feel like this episode is long enough.
Fair enough. You can hold me to that some episode down the line. Thanks again, Evie.
Thank you, Rob. And good luck. Have fun.
Thanks for listening to Peace Talks. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at peace_talks, and you can send email to peacetalkscast@gmail.com.